The following show is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. We are live back. Coffee with the Johns. Friday.
Fresh new look.
Four?
Got new chairs. Look at them.
Oh. Like,
more fitting.
I'm looking at you. I was like, you look the same.
I got a haircut. Come on.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Last week we took a little bit of a break, but we're back now. Got some interesting articles. We're going to be talking about a lot about real estate. I did a lot of research actually on unemployment and why is it that people are not going back to work, and what's the issue here. People are trying to hire and they can't find people, and people looking for jobs but they can't find work. So did some research. I came up with an answer that I enjoyed, that I believe I found accurate, and I see why this could be an issue. So I'm going to be sharing that with you guys, and would love to see what you guys think about that reason for all of this.
That's actually been a lot of topics. You and I have been having our contractors. Every time I come in, I say, well, here's another person that says they can't find anybody, can't find any work. That's delaying us, delaying other people. Yep. Like, very true.
Yeah, no, employment, unemployment, all this has been perplexing for a lot of economists. Everybody wants to blame, the $300 bonus and all that. And it's like, yes, that's an easy thing to blame, but is it really the cause?
Yeah.
And those are the things that I kind of, through the research and the stats and everything, kind of found out that it seems like it may not be. But with that being said, we've had a very fun last 2 weeks, a lot of going on, a lot of new marketing, a lot of things coming in. And I'm actually going to be talking to you guys about a new marketing strategy that I believe is going to be interesting to generate leads. That's going to be coming in before foreclosures do. So pay attention to that. But yesterday, you and I were talking about the lumber packages and the prices that we were getting.
Oh, my God.
So insane $16,000 spread. What the hell is going on?
I don't know. There's got to be something in that pack. I haven't broke them down. So we're building a new house, and we finally have gotten through the plumbing, and we're moving on to buying our lumber packages. And I've sent it to 3 local lumber yards here in San Antonio: Builders First Source, Guido's, and MG. Everyone says, oh, those are the 3 big ones. Send everything to them. So I sent them all to them. Took me forever for one to get the quotes back, because everyone's like, oh, it's just so busy. It's just so busy. It's so busy. We can't find help. We can't find help. So I think that's going to be a reoccurring phrase throughout this entire cast this morning.
Yeah.
It took me forever to get them back, and they started rolling in. First one came in, $41,000. It's like, okay. I had no idea what to base it off of, because it's our first new build lumber package we ever ordered. And then the second one comes in, and it comes in at, what was it, like 30? That one was 42. Sorry, it was 42, and this one came in at 26. Yeah, that's 16,000. Yeah, 26,000. I was like, what? Why is it weird? Because we had a conversation a week before. We're like, I'm just like, yeah, when you get something like when you first moved here and you're like, you got a foundation bid for 50 grand and then a foundation bid for 8,000. And it's like, what's the difference? Yeah. Why is there such a price difference? And I'm just like 41,000 to 26,000, like 42 to 46. Like, that's a big spread on a lumber package. Like, did somebody forget something? Is something being priced different? Something added? I don't know. And then the third one finally rolled in, and it rolled in at 30. I was like, okay, there's a price discrepancy of like 26 or 30. I can see that across an entire household of lumber. Yeah. But then 41,000 is like, what is this?
Yeah.
I mean, then looking at the, you can just see in the plywood differences, like in the I think the lowest one to the highest one, there's a $2,000 difference just in the 5/8 plywood that goes on your roof. And there's like 96 sheets or something like that.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, $2,000.
It's a big difference. So what is your theory on what that level of discrepancy between one lumberyard and another?
Well, I think it is like when I just looked at the plywood, because I know as a plywood is something recently that everyone's talking about. Like, and we all know plywood is just ungodly expensive. And so I was just comparing those things. And it was that, like I said, like between 96 sheets of OSB for the roof, or maybe it was 55. Yeah, it was 55 for the roof, 96 for the sides, other way around. I don't know. But just looking at that number and $2,000 price difference across that many sheets, like, it's not like we're talking 1,000 sheets that you have a $2,000 difference. You know, you have $2,000 difference in 96 sheets. Like, good Lord, it's almost $20 difference a sheet here. Yeah. And they weren't cheap. And like, I priced it out. Like, Home Depot actually has the cheapest plywood prices. And so I think that is a big driver in there, is that and you take that, okay, across all the things we need for a house, 2x4s, 2x8s, 2x6s, all kinds of different variations and lengths, clips for the roof, everything. It's like I could see, especially if I'm just looking at one line item and there's a $2,000 difference, and I look at the siding for half inch and there's like a $1,500 difference, like, okay, there's $3,500 of the $16,000 right there.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, now that was just 2 line items across 4 pages of line items. So you kind of take that all the way across, and it's like, okay, they're just very expensive.
And that's also what you and I were talking about, is that like Home Depot, why are they the cheapest? Because they can afford to price lower because they're such a massive chain, such a massive franchise. And they don't only sell lumber, they sell everything else. So they can afford to beat out their competition by pricing things lower. And I mean, we see that across all businesses like Amazon, Walmart. Like Amazon, I was hearing how they were one of the biggest proponents to raising the minimum wage above $15 because they know that mom and pop shops can't compete.
Well, that was always the thing, that when people were like, oh, Walmart's coming to town, but then everyone's like, it was a death sentence to small and pops, to small communities, because it would just kill every small business in like that service any kind of little thing in that community. And it's like, well, now you just have Walmart, so now all those mom and pop businesses just went out of business, all that commerce started, and it just like was an anchor point to continuous decline in those little tiny communities. Because like every little mom and pop shop was gone, so where'd all those jobs go? Where'd all the commerce involved with those little things? Now it's like everyone just goes to Walmart, and Walmart takes the money somewhere else, to where your mom and pop shop selling trinkets inside the little small towns like where I grew up, it's like that money stayed in that community.
Yeah.
But now it's being shipped somewhere else.
Yeah, because the owners live there, their employees live there, so all the profit, everything stays there.
Well, and then somebody goes and buys things. They go to one little shop, and then like we walk past another little bakery shop, well, I'm going to go into this shop too. But then once the little trinket shop goes out of business, nobody's going to that shop anymore, so the bakery shop doesn't get the business they get anymore. So it's always kind of that thing. Yeah. But I mean, that is capitalism at its finest, because you can make the argument, well, it drives out small businesses, but it keeps more money in the pockets of the people that need those products and services, because they're now, instead of paying $10, they can go buy for $5, so that money stays in their pocket. So it's kind of a catch-22 depending on what side of how you view capitalism.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just, that is capitalism. It's always going to correct, it's always going to over improve, under improve, but you can always count on it to kind of balance out at some points. With that being said, how about we touch on some real estate first? You had some articles that you were talking about before we went live, so
okay, so yes, one quick one. Texas Supreme Court extends the state program to help tenants avoid eviction until October 1st. So state eviction diversion program launched in response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been extended, according to a new emergency order for the Texas Supreme Court released on Monday. The diversion program was set to expire on July 27th. The new order extends it until October 1st. Monday order also allows a judge to postpone the eviction for 60 days if a landlord has a pending application for the program on behalf of a tenant, or if both parties say they're interested in participating, and they're talking about the rental assist program. So that is something that, and I think what it is it's taking them a very long time to get that money to prospective tenants and prospective landlords that are having issues. So they want to give it time, saying, hey, we don't want to evict people. And especially if a landlord's like, I need to evict this person, but now we're trying to work on this eviction aspect to get some of this relief for them. So I think that's why they're doing that. It's giving time for people to get that money into the system and into the hands of landlords and tenants, because it does pay rent and late payments for up to 15 months.
Well, and it's also something that you and I always talk about, is that as landlords, we don't want turnover, right? Like everybody always makes it seem like the landlords are these greedy landlords. All they care about is their profit and all this. And if you look at it that way, that all we care about is profit, turnovers are not profitable for us.
No.
Turnovers cause sometimes that you got to go and do some touch-up work, do some paint, fix some things. It takes some time before you get the next tenant in there. That's lost revenue, lost rents. It's not profitable. Nobody wants turnovers, right? So if we can avoid the turnover, keep the tenant in there, especially if they've been a great tenant. Like, we understand hard times happen and we're here to help. Yes, you do have shitty landlords, like you have shitty everything. But overall, landlords don't want turnovers.
No.
Right. So, I mean, this is good news. This is something that I believe a lot of us are going to, luckily we haven't needed to, or we haven't had any issues, but definitely something that we can all take advantage of.
So the next article, so I'm going to save the big one for last.
Ooh.
So mortgage refinance fee dropped by regulators, lowering costs for home borrowers. Something that I was like, because remember that controversial fee that they came out with, like, was it December last year? That extra half point thing on all refinances. Yep. Well, they're doing away with it now all of a sudden, less than a year into it. And it's like, son of a bitch. Like, what was the point of that? So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are dropping a fee on mortgage refinances that was instituted during the pandemic, lowering costs for borrowers, the Federal Housing Finance Agency said Friday. Fannie and Freddie were charging lenders a 50 point basis fee for all loans that were delivered to the two mortgage giants. The COVID-19 pandemic financially exacerbated Americans' affordable housing crisis, and limiting the adverse market refinance fee will help families take advantage of the low rate environment to save more money. Acting Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Sandra Thomas said in a statement, the fee was put in place just as the federal government instituted a massive mortgage bailout program at the start of the pandemic. At the worst of the economic shutdown, roughly 5% of Fannie and Freddie borrowers were in mortgage forbearance programs, and as of July 13th, that share has fallen to 2.1%. In total, 1.86 million borrowers remain in COVID forbearance plans, making up 3.5% of all active mortgages. For FHA VA, the share is 6.2%, and for private label and bank portfolio loans, the share is 4%. Mortgage rates recently dropped and are now sitting near a 5-month low. Applications to refinance jumped in the last 2 weeks.
So they're dropping that. Obviously, that risk of the whole reason why they even want to implement it wasn't really there, right? I mean, we saw that the risk and everything that we were worried about when this all happened, when it first started back in March 2020. I remember you and I, we were like, oh crap, and we had just made like a big purchase and everything. We're like,
we just bought a house. Like, we bought a house like on Wednesday, and like they shut the state down on Friday. And it was like, did we buy that already? I'm like, yep.
Like, shit. So,
well, I should cross fingers and hope that it's
kind of like our motto that became big in 2020 was, well, the only way out is through. So.
Yeah, at that point, it was like, well, here we go. Let's see how this works out.
But now, taking this into account, right? This is something that I see conversations throughout, like, certain Facebook groups, Bigger Pockets, and I love hearing when people that haven't even been in the market for a year have strong opinions about it. But what are your thoughts on the market starting to cool down, right? We're seeing this. I'm hearing this and reading this from a lot of people. They're saying, yeah, we're starting to see the market cool down. We're not seeing as much buyer demand. We're going to start seeing now prices stable off. Everything starts stabling off. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think there's some truth to it, and you do see it where application for mortgages they had been falling and stuff like that, and but we are getting to the time of the year where like things do start cooling off. Like July is the hottest month for closing, which means June is the highest month for contracts. Right. So you do start seeing things start cooling off and stuff like that. And then when we are now into the 12-month period to where it's like, hey, our pricing going to continue to rise because June, July, August last year is when this whole thing kind of started, with prices really going up and absorbing a lot of inventory. So I do think it's starting to cool, but I think it's also a sense that a little bit is like seasonally adjusted. The aspect where it's like, well, yeah, we're moving into the cooler part of the season, but it's also like prices have been astronomically high, and they've just gotten so high to where I have seen several articles that saying that the market is kind of starting to cool off a little bit as far as applications and pending home sales and things like that. But it's starting at such a low number that it's going to take a minute for that inventory to rise to a point to where it's like, hey, things are kind of leveling off as far as that goes.
That's kind of what my thoughts are when people are saying this, is that, yes, we might seem like we're starting to, quote unquote, cool off compared to how insane it's been, but I don't think we're cooling off at all anytime soon. I mean, I think the demand is still there. we are still seeing so many people from other states. The more we keep going, the more they're trying to leave those states. And these are issues that we're going to be talking about, what's leading to the unemployment issues. But we're seeing people leaving states. We're seeing demand for housing. We had a housing shortage before the pandemic hit. This created an even bigger housing shortage, especially in Texas and places like Florida and stuff. So the housing shortages are not going away, and we're not making up what we need to be making up per year. So that's not going away. What I think is cooling down is just all that initial like hype of the market's opening up. Let's go buy houses. Let's go do. That whole urge is kind of dying down a little bit, but I don't see this cooling off
there was
at all.
market fundamentals that were driving people to some of these states before the pandemic started, and this just made it even worse. And now it's with the thing, like now lumber prices are starting to come down. A lot of builders were like, hey, we're not building houses at these prices. And now we're seeing, like I was telling you when I was going to check one of our projects downtown, there's a rail yard just north of the Dignity neighborhood, and I crossed over a bridge on New Braunfels, and there was like 5 or 6 trains, at least a half mile long, just all lumber. Yeah. The entire trains were just all lumber. And I saw a video online of like, was it like somewhere on the Northeast coast, like some big shipping yard over there. And it says, y'all are wondering where the lumber's at? And he was taking a video. And I mean, it was probably 8 to 10 stacks high as far as the eye could see, just everywhere. Just lumber everywhere. So I think that's another thing that's going to start really balancing these things out over the next year is now these prices are starting to come down. We're seeing that hitting the real people building it, not your future contracts. And it's going to take a few months for those to really kind of fall down. But now there's going to be a huge amount of lumber hitting the market, and builders are going to start picking up and start building houses to feed this inventory. So cooling off, what's cooling off? Your 20% year over year appreciations. Right. That's what's going to be cooling off, which that needs to cool off because like you can't have prices continuing to rise at that exponential rate. Otherwise you are going to cause significant problems. And several people have talked about it, that they're concerned about how fast housing is rising in price. Not saying that like, hey, it's like bubble territory because there's some better fundamentals. These are better creditworthy people. They don't have the liar loans like they used to back in 2005, 6, 7 leading up to that last crash. But it's one of those that's like you just can't have prices continuing to rise that fast.
And that's really key. What you just said is that the people that are buying these homes can actually afford them.
Yeah.
The people that are overpaying, they're coming out with cash.
Yeah.
So in theory, the loans are still safe. It's just that the people may be underwater on the home, but it's cash that they already put out. So they're not necessarily underwater on a mortgage, which causes a financial crash, right? Like they put out the cash out of their own pocket to make up that difference to overpay for the home. So I think it's a different kind of thing. People can afford it. And another thought that I have is that you have lumber prices are starting to come down, but I don't think we're going to see cost of housing come down. I think the houses are set these new highs, and that's the comps now. They are the comps. So I don't see builders now building houses, and because lumber prices came down, they're going to say, "Oh, we're actually going to go ahead and sell this house for less than what we build it for because lumber prices came down." Like because of demand, because of everything, I don't see prices coming down anytime soon.
Well, one thing that they need to do in order for prices to come down is like you have to have basic economics. Like you have to have an oversupply of homes. And now competitors are competing against each other to bring price. It's like who's got the lower prices. They're competing they have more inventory than people buying. Like you got a long ways to go before that happens. Unless all of a sudden buyers just quit and stop buying, which is like, that really doesn't happen unless there's like a really big financial economic issue driving that, because there's a lot of people that have put off buying new homes, selling their homes because of these issues. So that is something that I think we would see. If that is what happens, we'll see that coming, because it's not like it's when we look at the lumber prices, a perfect example where the futures just dropped off, and now over the next like 3 months you're going to see prices go from $50 a sheet down to 40, down to 30, down to 20, and just like really fall down.
And we're going to see places like Home Depot, like Lowe's, the big box stores, they're going to be the ones primarily driving those costs down.
I mean,
because like you said, like a plywood at Home Depot is so much cheaper. And these other lumber companies, they're going to just have to start cutting their losses on whatever lumber they did buy at higher prices.
It's not like they're just barely cheaper either. Like between those like 4 companies so adding Home Depot into we're looking for lumber. Plywood alone, when I was just looking at it, it was one place was like the highest one was like damn near $70 a sheet, and then the next one was like 49, and the other one was like 42, and then Home Depot was down at 36.
Huge difference.
So like you're talking like almost half price, and like it's not like you need like a few sheets of it to build a house. Like that would like those were the single line item that had the highest cost was our plywood packages of all those quotes. To where now it's like, yeah, I'm gonna eliminate those from these stores. Like I'm not gonna go buy that many sheets. Now the problem where they're still selling those is to your big builders, because they don't need 100 sheets. They need 5,000 sheets, which Home Depot can't supply that. We can go build one house, 2, 3, 4 houses.
Yeah.
But when your big builders need that stuff, there's only so many lumber yards that can supply that.
And I'm also sure that those companies the lumber mills are selling it still at a lower discount to some builders are buying 5,000 sheets versus us that are buying, a couple hundred for a house or so, and plus I doubt these guys that are buying the 5,000 sheets are buying from your retail lumber mills. They're probably going like to the actual mills and doing some shit from the source. I heard, man, I'm trying to remember who was the builder, but there's builders that they buy their lumber from where Home Depot buys their lumber, but yeah, you're building thousands of homes across the country.
Because like Home Depot says, we need 10,000 sheets of plywood distributed across all these stores.
Exactly.
KB goes and says, we need 100,000 sheets distributed across this region.
Yeah.
So they can kind of do stuff like that. So where but now going back to like the housing aspect, like housing has such a long lead time that it's going to take a long time for that amount of inventory. And it's also like leading into it, they got to have people to build the houses too.
Yeah.
And every trade that we've talked to, there hasn't been probably a single contractor of ours that we work with that has not told me that they're having problems finding people to work. And just the prices they're paying. He's like, one of them, he's like, I'm paying my guys $200 a day to dig holes. That's it. It's like they're making $50,000 a year. It's like all they do is they show up, they dig a hole, they move some concrete, and they're gone. And he's like, I can't find people to stay working. He's like, I can hire them, but they'll come, it's too hard. Or you start too early. They always have an excuse. It's like they just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's been across like one of our granite person we use. She was usually normally like, she came and measured. Within that week, we had granite. It's taken her 3 weeks to get the granite. And she's like, I can't find people to work. And then when I go to the supply houses, they're short on slabs of granite because they can't find people to move the granite around. So it's like, it's across the whole thing of like, who's not working? Why are people not working?
Well, I told you, John, we're going to hit that topic.
Okay. Well, anyways. All right. Well, move on to the next thing. So that's what I said. It's going to be a reoccurring topic.
Yeah.
And then talking about lumber, home buyers aren't seeing savings from falling lumber prices, and here's why. The price of lumber on the futures market has been giving up all of its gains for this year, falling by more than 50% in just the last few months. Home builders, home buyers, and homeowners looking to remodel, however, are not seeing savings yet. Now demand for remodeling is falling as people spend more money on vacations instead. Home builders are seeing strong demand. Home builders are still seeing strong demand, but they have slowed construction due to high costs. Sawmills have gotten back online, but many are having issues finding enough labor. Low lumber prices are a welcome sign, but not really yet on the retail side. Lumber prices are still up nearly 100% from the spring of last year. The price of lumber packages quoted to home builders is still at record high. Retailers, of course, want to buy their products low and sell high, so they're still selling the inventory they have at higher prices, despite what the futures markets say. Also, given soaring demand and supply chain issues, their inventory is low anyway, and there is still demand, so they have no reason to lower prices, but that will change in the coming months. Because you think about it like that video of all that lumber. Okay, so that lumber is here in the U.S., but it's stuck in these shipping yards. Yep. They got to get that to lumber stores. So you have massive amounts of lumber just sitting here, but it's like, we don't have the truckers to get it anywhere. Yeah. So like we can't get it anywhere. It's like it's here. So that's like, yes, the futures market's dropping off, and that will trickle through the economy eventually. But now it's all coming down to retailers paid those prices back in May for this lumber, and now it's at their store from those prices. So it's going to take several months for those prices to work their way down.
Yeah.
So a guy who is the Director of Specialty Products at Sherwood Lumber, a national wholesaler and distributor in Palmer, Massachusetts, says we are still in price discovery mode. They buy from mills in North America and Europe and ships directly to its consumers. Goodman said they are just now seeing a lot more product coming to the market. Everyone is going to try to hold on as long as they can, but the market is going to find its way. Maybe in the end, the price is higher because of inflation, but we are definitely in a housing boom now that doesn't seem to be going away, says Goodman. While the price of softwood lumber is coming down, the price of other products like oriented strand board, OSB, plywood, which is a type of engineered wood product used for panels, is up 325% year over year and 500% from pre-pandemic levels due to supply chain issues. So it's exactly that. Like, they can make it, they got to get it somewhere. So it's labor shortages up and down the entire supply chain. So the last real estate market that our article I found was something that I found very interesting that we've kind of been talking about, is how Biden's neighborhood homes proposal impacts real estate investors. Now, I'm going to take a drink of water real quick because it's kind of a long article.
Yeah. Well, kind of going back to what you were saying with that lumber article, that's what we were talking about before when people say, oh, you know, this is happening to that sector or these people. That's not my problem. How everything is connected. Now the supply chain of people not working, truckers not being available, hurts deliveries from happening, which causes other prices to go up because now they don't have the goods. So what goods they do have, they got to price up. So
it's also one of the things, like, everyone's fighting for labor.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, oh, well, that's the lumber market. They don't have to worry about that. Yeah, but how does that lumber, or how does your produce get from the distributor to you? It comes via truck. Well, if they're sucking all the truckers into the lumber industry to move lumber around, that affects you.
Yeah, it's not like you have, no, these are lumber truck drivers. No, they're just truck drivers. They can do truck driving for any industry. It doesn't really matter except for hazardous materials. You got to have your permits, but you know, you can do your truck driving for any industry. So like you're saying, if the lumber industry takes up all those truck drivers, now groceries and the food industry and stuff like that, they're going to start seeing a spike because now it's like, well, we don't have truck drivers to deliver food. So everything affects it all. So
it does. So this article is like how Biden's neighborhood home proposal impacts real estate investors. So it's one thing we've been hearing for quite a while of what the Biden administration is going to do for the affordability crisis and things like that, for home buyer or down payment assistance and things like that. And we always talked about, like, well, it's not going to help the industry because, like, you just add more buyers being able to buy. That's going to jack prices up. You need supply of homes. You need homes. Yeah. And that's what they talked about in this article. It's the first time I've actually heard about them doing this. So this article follows a lady out of Atlanta that's flipping houses in her hometown of Dayton, Ohio.
With years of experience.
Yeah, she started doing it in 2020, and so she knows what she's doing. McCormick's real estate, her name is something McCormick's. McCormick. So McCormick's real estate investing strategy and its outcomes in underserved Dayton neighborhoods represents a microcosm of what a new tax credit proposal from the Biden administration designed to encourage across the country in similar neighborhoods. Dubbed the Neighborhood Home Tax Credit, the proposal is part of the larger American Jobs Plan legislation, also known as Biden's infrastructure plan. The tax credit goal include attracting private investment in the development of affordable homes and bolstering home ownership rates for low and moderate income home buyers in underserved communities, according to the White House fact sheet. The tax credit is structured to incentivize the type of home ownership producing development that McCormick is doing, but on a larger scale, according to Julia Gordon, president of the National Community Stabilization Trust. NCST. NCST strongly supports this legislation, which is different from other real estate development incentives because it is reserved for home ownership only. Our organization has worked on it for about 5 years now, and we manage the large coalition that has been supporting its passage, Gordon said. The goal is to support rehabbing or constructing homes at scale so we could potentially see comprehensive community revitalization projects that affect 50 to 100 or even more units. So this is targeting They have to be sold to homeowners. They have to be bought and resold to homeowners in order to qualify for these things. So it's not like investors can go in there like, oh, I'm getting a tax credit for fixing up these crappy houses and I rent them out and now I make it. No, it's got to be sold and put back on the market for homeowners. Properties in underserved census tracts will qualify for the tax credit, which will go on to help cover losses that developers might experience when investing in these areas. The White House estimates about 1 in 4 census tracts are underserved, defined as those with poverty rates that are at least 130% of the area poverty rate, have a median family income below 80% of the area median family income, and have median home values that are lower than area median home values. The Neighborhood Homes Coalition, the coalition led by NCST, in support of the proposal, has created a map showing which census tracts qualify. So we'll show a link to this article in the show notes, and you can actually go into this article, and it shows a map of the United States, and it has like little bubbles all over the place of like how big a percentage of these census tracts are talking about qualify for these kind of things and where they're kind of at. And it's really kind of shocking to look at. Like heavy concentration in the Northeast, the Rust Belt, and surprisingly like a ton down in Florida. Texas, not so much, but it was just kind of crazy to see the discrepancy in some of these things. So purchasing properties in underserved neighborhoods alone won't allow developers to qualify for the tax credit. They also need to sell the rehab properties to eligible home buyers, presumably lower occupants, although the proposal doesn't explicitly specify that, for an affordable price point. The proposal defines that affordable price points as one that does not exceed 4 times the area median family income. Additionally, properties must be sold to buyers with incomes not exceeding 140% of the area's median family income. So that is something that I think is like, okay, now you're addressing the problem with this. It's like adding more buyers to the housing market is not going to do it. The need and lack of homes coupled with the down payment system. Now that is a two-pronged solution to the problem we're having to increase home ownership and get more affordable housing on the market, where it's like, hey, Mr. Developer, I know these areas are risky. They don't do well. Like, we're going to provide incentives and tax credits, which it's not. And like tax credit is $1 for $1 off your taxes, right, and you can get money back via that route. So as long as you can withstand a year of taking some losses, you can recoup that stuff later on in the tax bill.
And one thing that I find funny with all this that comes to mind is I think it's great. I do think it's good that they're doing this, but it just brings up always that stigma that investors are to blame for high home prices and everything like that, right? But like what we always said, if there weren't reasons in the market for us to be there, we wouldn't be there. It's really that simple. And what are the incentives that they're giving us right now? I mean, they're giving people incentives to go to these areas where poverty is high to rejuvenate, revitalize those areas. What is that going to do? It's going to cause gentrification, right? Because as you renovate, sell homes, they're going to sell for higher values. Each home sold is going to sell for slightly higher than the last one. Next thing you know, everybody's complaining about gentrification. Well, and so it's like, what, you can't have it both ways, right?
Well, I'm just going to call you CAP model, capital asset pricing model. CAP model, all government affordability, quote, affordability assistance programs will accelerate home price increases, and that is what it'll do. And they even talk about in the article like the percentages of what homes sold. They had some graphs in there of like what these houses were bought at for what they were sold at, and all of them were 100% over the average asking prices for the area. So, but they spun the article saying like, but this does help the people that are wanting to move because it does increase home values. So it is exactly that. It will increase home values because that's what it's designed to do. And it's going to allowing people to enter these programs. That's why they're giving these down payment assistance programs. And it's going to increase these lower income areas because it's not worth somebody to buy a house for $25,000, put $65,000 into it when it only sells for $90,000.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you need to have to be able to sell these things for profits and absorb losses. Because, I mean, perfect example, you look at east and west of downtown San Antonio compared to 15 years ago to now. Yeah. It's like those houses, you couldn't do anything with them. It took a long time for that to really trickle into those values to make it worth investing in. So this is the government getting behind them, but it's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to drive prices up in those areas, but it's also making those houses worth something to those people that do own in those areas, because that's what home ownership is designed to do, is build wealth over time. And they have to take the bottom and subsidize those losses so people do invest in those things and bring those home prices up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll take too long for the market to do it in itself.
Well, and another thing that we are still not seeing, and this is a point that you and I brought up before, is that you need to get rid of that FHA 90-day rule, right? Because what happens in all these areas when you're renovating, you're doing all that, everybody that's coming in with conventional loans, with cash, with all that, beats out FHA buyers every day of the week, because FHA buyers got to wait 90 days before they can submit an offer on a house that's been flipped, that's been renovated. So in these areas that you're encouraging renovations, flips, and things of the sort, you're also hurting any of the people that can afford, that would possibly want to be able to live there. And by the time they can get there, all they have left are more expensive homes, because the ones that were sold at a cheaper price at the beginning were being picked up by conventional buyers and cash buyers. So I believe, I might be wrong, it doesn't happen, but hey, I believe that, they have to adjust this FHA rule, because that 90-day limit, that 90-day rule, I think hurts FHA buyers. And they're the ones that can't afford housing.
In a hot housing market environment like we're in right now, is like, for sure, because now it's like, we used to buy houses and we'd sit on them for 90 days.
Yep.
And before we time it to where our rehab would end it on 90 days, and we can get on the market around that time. And that means, but we borrow money and have to pay interest at high interest rates for 2 months to withstand that. Or like now it's like, man, I don't care about FHA because I know I'm a conventional buyer. I'm going to fix it up as fast as I can, throw it in the market, and it's gone. So FHA people, like, they have no opportunity to buy these quote unquote renovated, fixed up homes. They have to buy somebody from like a homeowner. So it's
Well, so what do you think? Should I talk about that new marketing strategy people should be jumping on to generate leads here in San Antonio?
Which one is it? What is that?
Should I get into the unemployment topic?
What's your marketing strategy? I want to know.
Real estate unemployment. What do you guys think?
Marketing.
Marketing. I like marketing. So,
do you? I don't.
Here's an opportunity that I see coming up. San Antonio water system will start shutting off water again this fall. San Antonio customers who had trouble paying their water bills through the recent pandemic will have to catch up before the water disconnection service begins this fall. The San Antonio water system will start disconnecting water when the moratorium ends in October for customers with unpaid current or past bills, board members discussed at the July 13th meeting. However, customers who enroll in a payment plan will be excluded from service disconnection. The utility will also start assessing late fees and accounts in August. So they're not shutting it off until October, but they're going to start assessing late fees starting August. But there will be no retroactive assessments. So SAW's representatives report that a June meeting that there were over 52,000 delinquent accounts.
Whoa.
52,000 delinquent accounts. All right, guys? You're listening. Let that sink in. The goal for SAWS is not to cut people off, says Gavino Ramos, Vice President of Communications and External Affairs. It's to put them on a payment plan so that we can help partner with them on paying their back bill. There are 3, 6, and 9-month plans. But Ramos says that he understands it may take longer for customers to catch up. We also asked is they give us a call. The SAWS Uplift program will put customers in touch with state and city partner agencies to provide financial assistance. So here's where I see the opportunity, right? That they are offering a payment plan. The payment plan is only 3, 6, or 9 months of a payment plan. 52,000 homes delinquent. I imagine that there's quite a number of them that need much more than 9 months. So they say you can reach out, and the SAWS Uplift program is going to put you in contact with somebody in the state or city to try to help out. We've already seen it and heard it from people that when they do, it takes months. Sometimes they don't hear back. During this whole time, they're starting interest in August, and they're going to start shutting off water in October. That's not a very long time. So now you have people that are getting their water shut off. That's a main necessity. When people are getting their water shut off and they can't afford to pay their water bill, I mean, these are people that are really struggling financially.
You're really on the fringe if you can't afford your water bill.
Yeah.
Because water's not that expensive.
Yep.
As far as like overall bills of operating and owning a house or living, so like your water bill might be what, $40 to $70 depending on it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a whole lot. Like, man, if you're really skimping on your water bill, like, man, you really are.
You're hurting.
Your electric bill.
And that was when I read this. That was my thing. Like, why? To me, it's a huge opportunity because there's just like foreclosure. Like when we talked about the foreclosure crisis that's coming, right? What do we see is that there's people that are they're not even going to know that they can reach out and do a payment plan. Right? There's people that are completely unaware, and not just unaware, but they don't even do the research to see, hey, is there any help for this? So all these people, that's where investors come in. Yeah. As investors, the good kind.
We call us problem solvers.
Problem solvers. There you go. That we're going to put down on our resume. I saw that on somebody's resume for a pitch. I'm a problem solver. That's a good resume. But good real estate investors are going to do this for homeowners. They're going to reach out to them. They're going to see that you're on the water shutoff list. Hey, did you know there's a payment plan? Did you know? Why do we do that? Because a lot of people are saying, get out of here. No investor is going to do that because you want to take the house. You're greedy. No, because at least for us, we want to help them out. Because if there's a way to help them out, guess what? That tends to bring us more business later.
Yeah.
Right? And if chances are, just like foreclosures, if they fell behind before, there's an underlying issue that's much bigger. Because if you fall behind on paying your water bill, I mean, you are having issues paying damn near anything else, right? Let alone your mortgage, let alone anything else.
Well, I mean, or just a tenant, somebody that's just renting the house, like water being turned off for them too, and the landlord, like, it's like, hey, do you know your tenants had the water turned off because the property shows up on this house? Where it's like, it's easy to do. Like, you look it up, and then you just the address, and you see it's an absentee homeowner. Like, the homeowner doesn't know that, like, hey, my tenant just had their water shut off, or like, hey, you might be having a precursor here to having a problem here because your rent's $1,000 a month, and your tenant can't afford an $80 water bill. Like, you're eventually going to roll over and start having problems.
So let me ask you too. Let's say in a situation like that, right? The tenant didn't pay the water bill. They shut off the water. Whatever happens, tenant leaves, gets evicted, whatever. Does the landlord need to come in and take care of that water bill? What happens with that water bill?
No, I mean, it's attached to that previous tenant because eventually they'll shut the water off. And when the person comes back on and says, hey, I need to turn water on at this service, my name is John, and the person's name was Steve. It's like they're going to go after Steve continuously to try to collect those back payments, but they're not going to attach it to the house.
Okay. All right. I honestly didn't know. I was curious about that.
I mean, I can't say that for certainty, but I'd say I got a 95%
But if you guys,
that's how it happened.
If you guys don't understand like the gold that this opportunity is, I mean, you're not listening. This is an opportunity that, like, even John brought it up. Like, you want to niche down the 52,000 people that are behind. Start looking for absentee landlords, absentee homeowners, because now you have absentee homeowners, like you said, that have tenants that are back on, are falling behind on their water bill, and they might get their water shut off. Where it's like now they have a troubled tenant. That tenant, if they couldn't pay their water bill, chances are they haven't been paying their rent either. I mean, you start thinking through this as an investor, there's a huge opportunity here for problem solving. Yeah. There's a huge opportunity. And this is a precursor to foreclosures. I mean, you want to know which properties are going to be in foreclosures? Again, they haven't been paying their water bill.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are they haven't been paying their mortgages. So let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about this strategy? Do you agree? Do you not? Are you confused? Or do you have questions about it? Let us know. Also, I'm going to try to find it, but we did an interview, remember, with Rivar Report, that they came out with an article that was bashing investors, saying that we were taking advantage of people on the water shutoff list.
Yeah.
And then you had Nuremberg come out and say, "Oh yeah, it's completely disgraceful,
the predatory. We need to fix
predatory."
this. It's like,
And one thing that I reached out to um
Rivard report.
the reporter, the person that wrote the article, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, you should try to get both sides to the story before you start bashing investors." So he sat down with us, and we told him, we're like, "You know how many people you reach out to that are on the water shutoff list, and you're telling them like, hey, if you're having troubles, like, and you need to sell your home, like, I'll buy it."
Yeah.
They're like, "I can still sell it even though it doesn't have water?" They didn't even know they can sell it. So they're over here living with no water, struggling, being in ton of financial distress, mental distress, because they don't know what their options are. You understand? Are there bad investors? Yes. There's also bad doctors, bad politicians, believe it or not.
Bad reporters. There's a bad apple in every industry.
So they're bad, bad people in every area. But the majority of us are actually good.
Yeah.
The majority of us were actually here to help.
Well, because they also think of investor or housing investors. It's like, oh, you're just slumlords. You're taking advantage. Like, everyone thinks that. And that's why, like, it sucks that you have to stop using the word, like, investor in pitches and things because, like, oh, you're just trying to get a deal. You're trying to take advantage. Like, yes, we are in this for making a profit. But some of these people, when we told the guy, like, think about it. It's like, if you can't pay your water, that means you can't maintain the house. Your foundation's probably bad. Your house is old, electrical roof, holes in the wall. Or you don't know who can sell it. No real estate agent wants to talk to you because, like, this house is crappy. I don't want to deal with that. Yeah. But along comes an investor and saying, hey, I'll still buy you out from this house. You got a mortgage underneath it. I'll take care of that. To where if they don't have that option, they go into foreclosure. That hits their credit score. They go back, it's a downward spiral into poverty to where, like, we're coming in and providing an option. It's like, hey, you can still buy out. And they're also thinking, if they can't take care of their house, it gets foreclosed on, it's in disrepair, and it sits there and is vacant, it becomes a problem for rodents, it becomes a problem for eyesores, fire, all kinds of things, which brings down the value of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, like, us coming in and buying it means that we now take the financial responsibility and the legal responsibility. We don't buy these houses and just sit on them. Well, some people do. Yeah. But we take it on, we buy it, we put capital into it because we have to provide, by law, a safe home for a tenant.
Well, it's funny because I had a mentoring session with somebody recently, and we were talking about marketing ideas, and I threw a bunch of them at him. He's like, man, honestly, like, how is it that you keep coming up with all these marketing ideas? I was like, because you're not understanding what your job as a real estate investor is. Your job as a real estate investor, number one, is not necessarily to just make money. Your job is to think about, what problem am I solving? That's the job of an entrepreneur, period. What makes an entrepreneur a successful entrepreneur is you're solving a problem that the world needs solved, right? That people need solved. The more people that you're solving that problem for, the more money you're actually going to make, right? That, which is why Bezos is one of the richest people in the world. So you're solving a problem. And, like, think about it that way. What problems are we seeing in the world today? What problems are we seeing in our city today? Affordability, or is that a problem? Tenants not paying their rent, is that a problem? Like, what problems are we seeing, and now figure out what could be a solution to that? Because wherever those problems are, there's an opportunity. You're just not thinking that way. You're thinking about, I just need a property to flip, right? And it's like, okay, that's kind of like the end goal. But fall back a little bit. Yeah. What's the original problem? How can you generate that lead? How can you get that?
And that's what we talk about. Like, people got to get into real estate for the right reasons. Yeah. Or, like, if you're in it just to make money and you're looking at the wrong ways, like, that's somebody that's in it for the short term. They're not going to make a career out of this. I mean, some people could change and realize, like, what they're doing, but most people get into real estate thinking, oh, I can make a bunch of money. And after, like, 2, 3 years, 4 years, realizing how much work this is and the burnout kicks in, they tend to fall out. So that is definitely something that look out for.
So I actually had what do they call it? An epiphany this past week. So
John's epiphanies, everybody. Hold on your chairs.
Yeah. Political correctness out the window now. No, just kidding. But I had an epiphany. I was thinking about, I was reading the book Atomic Habits. Right? And excellent book. If you haven't read it, excellent book. But he talks about building habits and building all that. And it kind of triggered something on me. It was like, why is it that people that when they make a goal, right? A New Year's resolution, oh, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to start investing. I'm going to create my savings. I'm going to do all this, right? Why is it that they fail? And the reason I believe they fail is because they have a goal of, I'm going to lose 15 pounds. Okay, maybe you lose 15 pounds. And then you're like, yay, I hit my goal. Then you gain 15 pounds, if not more. So you're like, what the hell happened? The question you need to be asking yourself is not, how can I lose 15 pounds? But how can I become the person that is 15 pounds lighter? How can I become the person that's healthier, that works out more, right? How can I become the person that's always saving, that's always investing? How can I become the person that can generate their own deals, that can become a full-time real estate investor? Not how can I get my next flip? How can I become a person that's always investing in real estate? Because when you shift that, I think that when you shift that mindset, you don't only lose the 15 pounds, but you keep it off and you get in excellent shape, because your goal is not short-term, it's long-term goal. It's how do I become that person, right?
Yeah.
Every time I always hear people that, and I'm guilty of this. I'm not saying like, hey, this is everybody else. I'm the number one person with my short-term goals and everything. But everybody says the same thing when they get into business. Oh, when I make money, that's when I'm going to start saving. When I make money, that's when I start investing. What you don't understand is that the longer you wait, the more you're building a habit of not saving, of not investing. So that's where I think that was my epiphany this past week.
Well, I mean, it's very true, because everyone looks at the person and is like, oh, look how great they look how fit they look how this is like I want to look like that. It's like, well, to look like that, you have to live the life that they're living. It's like, what habits do they have? It's like, they don't go eat ice cream before they go to bed. They don't. They go to the gym regularly. They constantly do the things that. That's why I'm so buff. There you go. So,
he's not laughing at you. He's laughing with you.
The comment was just funny. That is true. I mean, for sure. And it's like, even like a real estate investor, it's like, what do the successful people do? What does like the wealthy people do? Like, oh, well, they have money so they can invest. Like Warren Buffett, like, what is it? Like 80% of millionaires are self-made millionaires. Yeah. Like, they didn't inherit wealth. Like, what were the habits that they started doing? And there's numerous books, there's numerous things that just create, like, where they say, like, just start with $10 a week, a month, whatever it is, and get in that habit of transferring money over. And then over the course of a year or two, you start seeing the benefits of that, and you start compounding it in really growth. But you have to understand why it is and want to actually do it. Not just do it because somebody said you're doing it. You have to understand why you're doing it, what the reason is behind it, so you're not just like, otherwise you'll just fall off. Yeah. You won't pay attention. If somebody's telling you to do it, or you have a short-term goal or something like that, you're just not going to do it. So when it comes to real estate, it's like, you got to get in the habit of realizing, like, this person has a problem. I need to figure out how I can solve it. But then at the end of the day, like, money does have to come from it too, because you have to live your life. For
sure. And that's, so I wanted to share a personal story, right? So cue the sad music. You bring out the violins. But this past week, it's the first time I've ever burned out, right? I didn't even know that was a thing. It was beyond...
All those other people were just lying, talking about burnout.
Yeah, I was like, you pussies, you just complaining about this. But anyway, I hit that level, and I was like, it was scary, because I mean, I would read things, but I wasn't comprehending what I was reading. Like, it was beyond insane how my brain was just like, nope, I'm done. So it was pretty crazy. It was kind of scary. But one thing I realized was, that's where it came from, is I realized my habits. So I had a habit of being in survival mode, right? I mean, people know, I grew up as an immigrant in this country, so we were always on the edge of, like, any minute now we could get deported for whatever reason, right? So we can lose everything. So you're always kind of working in survival mode your whole time. So I had that habit of always working in survival mode. That means that I have to do everything. I have to do everything right now. I have to hurry up. I have to work hard. I can't stop. I can't take breaks. I can't relax. I can't enjoy things. Not realizing that I'm already a citizen. I mean, I don't think they can get me out now, but I'm a citizen of this country. So that's great. Our business is doing pretty damn well. Right, so we're doing very good. So we don't need that money. We don't need to work as hard like we used to work, that because we weren't going to eat next week, right? So but I kept those habits because I never took the time to build the right habits. And it came to a point where actually you say, so what's the problem with working so hard? That you work so damn hard, it became counterproductive to what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where we were no longer moving forward as fast. We were taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We were moving very slow, and that step back was always just hitting you hard, right? Because you take that step back, you're like, what the hell?
So because you look, when you start out, or we started out, it's like we had just like one thing is like find a house, find a buyer, make a spread in between so we can make money to eat. But now it's like we've expanded our business because like we don't like this show. Like this doesn't just happen overnight with no work involved. Right. All the social media, all the housing, we were just doing wholesales. So now we have buy and holds, we have new builds, we have fix and flips, we have a number of different projects going on, number of different things, all the things that we want to do. And you go at it with that same mentality. It's like, I got to do all of them and work so hard at every single thing to where it's like the analogy of like you're jack of all trade, master none. It's like you're working at everything, trying to do everything to move all forward, and none of them are moving forward, and you're actually going backwards. Yeah. Because like what's that saying? If you're not growing, you're dying kind of scenario where it's like I'm focusing on everything all at once, doing all these projects, all these things that I want to do at one time with all this work, and none of them are actually taking the proper time to curate it, to get it to really move forward to where it can sustain itself.
Well, and then too, like you and I discussed, when we were starting off, a lot of those multiple things that we were doing were actually pretty small things, right? There were things that we were doing a lot of multiple things because they could be accomplished within the day, within the week. So you can do a lot of multitasking because we weren't that big. It was just us.
Yeah.
Where now, like the projects that we're working on, the things that we're working on, they're actually things to set up systems, to scale a business, to go to other cities, to do more things, to take in a lot more money. It's like, no, these tasks actually take more brain power. They take more time. They take more planning, more action, more curating, more, taking care of than what we used to do. But the habits were there. The habits of just do everything at once and then realizing that's like, none of it is getting done. You know what I mean? Like nothing's moving forward. And then because nothing's moving forward and you're getting to a level, it's like, you actually start moving backwards.
Well, you get frustrated and you try to work even harder to make it all move forward at the same time. And it's like it's a self-reinforcing circle down to the bottom of just,
Yeah. So I hope that helps you guys. My epiphany, I hope that's something that resonates with some of you. But with that being said, let's get into the main topic, the main event.
The Federal Reserve.
Before we talk about the main event, did you watch the McGregor fight?
No.
Woo!
I heard about it. I saw the end of it.
My goodness.
That meme was all over the internet.
My goodness. So that fight, for those of you that did not watch it, I love UFC. I used to love boxing before it just became kind of like I don't know what the hell it became. It was just beyond insane. It was just boring as hell to watch. UFC, I've been a fan of for quite a few years now. And Conor McGregor, was one of the top fighters in the UFC and is known for trash talking. And he talked so much shit to this guy.
Wasn't it Dustin Poirier?
Poirier, there we go. I always forget his name.
Well, this is like the third time they fought, right?
Yeah. So this is that kind of, it was a rematch. Like
a rematch of the rematch.
Yeah. So this was, it was going to break the tie, I believe. So it was a big fight, big promotion, everything. McGregor went as far as like talking shit about Poirier's wife and his family. I mean, like he has no rules, no limits.
Just savage level of like shit talking.
So, but what was different this fight though is I saw McGregor like actually come in like the old McGregor. Like he looked hungry for this fight. So I was like, I got excited. I was like, this is going to be a good fight. And it was. It started off, man, that thing was just, they were landing blows. McGregor had his ear cut like early on. I mean, this is all happening in the first round. What's funny is that Val doesn't watch these fights because she doesn't like violence and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, she was up and she's like, oh yeah, I don't know. She just sat down. She's like, I'll just watch it, see what it is. And what happens is McGregor, towards the end of the first round, decides to throw a kick, hits Poirier, and you can tell, like you can see that, like the way it landed, like he threw a lot of power behind that kick. And when he brings his foot back to land it, the whole thing just bent at the shin, and it just bent out.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I almost threw up.
Yeah, you got to queasy stomach around stuff like that.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh God, because he just stood back. That ankle just bent right at the shin. He landed all his weight on it. And then he just like falls back. And obviously it was a technical knockout at that point because, I mean, they had to stop the fight. The guy has a freaking broken leg.
Yeah.
And what's amazing though, with the broken leg, with everything, he was still talking shit.
Oh, man. I heard that, like, your wife's in my DMs, bro. I didn't see that at the going out. Like, it was or it wasn't technical, they called it. It was like doctor stoppage or something like that. Yeah. And it was just funny how there were so many memes showing of like how he was talking trash. Like, Poirier is going to be leaving on a stretcher by the time I'm done with him. And the next image was him leaving on a stretcher, rolling out. I was like, oh
no, it was beyond insane. That was a crazy, crazy fight. I still think McGregor would have lost because he was getting rocked that whole fight. But it was insane. I
said it was like some people that I know were talking about. I was like, it was actually like a really entertaining fight. To where like going out of the first round, like, who was really winning? Not really anybody. They were both landing some hella shots and both going hardcore at it. Yeah. And then and a lot of people are saying that McGregor, like, he probably fractured it multiple times throughout that fight. Like, he missed. He was kicking. He was kicking a lot, and they said some people thought like it was fractured before he even came into the fight. To where like he hit it, injured it several times, and has a lot of hairline stress fractures. And then when he planted on it so hard,
I find that to be very stupid if that's the case, because I heard that before too, that he had a hairline fracture or something before coming in. So it's like, if you did, why were you going so hard with that leg?
Yeah.
Use anything else. Why did you go so hard with that leg?
And his left leg too, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like I think he's right-handed. So like, why were you using your non?
Oh, he can switch up. So.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, it's a small little tangent there. It was just a crazy fight. Let's talk about unemployment and what it is that I found out that it satisfied my curiosity as to why we are not seeing the level of workers and everything. So
satisfied your curiosity. I'm curious about this.
So let's start it off with the sign outside a Lincoln, Nebraska Burger King was a little different. It said, "We all quit. Sorry for the inconvenience." So you had 9 employees in Nebraska Burger King that they decided to all quit at the same time. The manager, Flores, said that due to an ever-changing staff of district managers, her particular branch had been overlooked, leading to working conditions that included 90-degree temperatures in the kitchen, resulting in severe dehydration and 50 to 60-hour work weeks. Oh. Flores said that her boss called her a baby. That's insane that they actually did that. After the sign went viral on social media, her boss told her she was fired and asked her to hand in her keys. Flores and Johnson's another employee there, said that they believed other Burger King workers in the area were subject to similar treatment. So this is all going to be building up, just so you know, if you're wondering, like, what's this got to do with anything? So it says this next article was like pretty much why the tight U.S. labor market is here to stay. So in a series of blogs posts last week, Commonwealth Financial Network Chief Investment Officer Brad McMillan discussed just what's going on with the labor shortages in the U.S. So he says, "Okay, baby boomers, there were more jobs openings than workers to fill them in the U.S. economy prior to the pandemic. A long-term graph of number of job openings subtracted from the number of unemployed Americans reveals that the number of surplus jobs has been trending lower ever since the financial crisis in 2008 and dipped into negative territory back in 2018. One of the primary reasons for this long-term trend is that retirement of the baby boom generation. In fact, the pandemic forced a number of baby boomers into early retirement since the beginning of 2020. So that's one of the factors. One of the factors that seems to be driving unemployment is that baby boomers were pretty much forced to retire. Stock market has been going all-time high. A lot of baby boomers are depending, on their 401k,
Well, they
stuff like
learned
that.
their lesson in 2008 too, to where like the baby boom generation were smacked by that and watched their accounts because they were nearing retirement. They're a lot of them were in their 40s and 50s, getting older, and they realized like, holy shit, I got to work a hell of a lot longer now, and my 401k, what I'm depending on my retirement, just went to nothing, and now they're at all-time highs, and they saw the whiplash of how fast it went down, how fast it came back. They're like, okay, I'm done.
So you have all these baby boomers that are leaving the job market, right? And these are people that have the old habits of you show up, you do your job, you go home, right? That's it. That's what they grew up doing. That's what it was. So now let's move forward a little bit. And we have an article that was written by Nobel winning poverty researcher on why people aren't going back to work. So for Esther Duflo, a French-American economist and MIT professor who is the youngest person to receive a Nobel Prize in economic science, understanding the lives of the poor and how to design anti-poverty measures has been a professional mission long before the pandemic for her. On the road to economic recovery, she says that gender inequality, unequal access to childcare, return to in-person work mandates, and vaccine access are among the many pressing issues surrounding return to work in the United States and global economic recovery. But when it comes to the debate over whether statewide unemployment benefits are responsible for workers choosing to stay out of the labor market, she says that economists such as herself aren't satisfied with an opinion not based on actual research. So state leaders removed benefits in hopes of solving hiring challenges for businesses. But Duflo is in agreement with many economists who don't think this is either the cause or solution for the country's tight labor market. And in a few weeks since states suspended benefits, it has not increased workforce participation. And in some cases, it hurt the economy by decreasing household spending. So there are still more than 10 million Americans enrolled in pandemic-related programs. But she says unemployment benefits gave people flexibility and doesn't make people lazy. So I actually searched a little bit deeper, and I saw that states that cut the benefits, including the extra $300 a week, about 3 months ahead of their September expiration, job searches were about 4% below the national average. And these states were Alaska, Iowa, Mississippi, and Missouri, which stopped paying for the federal benefits as of June 12th. Then you have activity is 1% lower in 8 states that ended them in June 19th. People in those states are less likely to be searching than your average job seeker right now. You'd think they'd be searching more. At least right now, this does push back on the idea that federal unemployment benefits are the main reason that the labor market has this kind of friction. So this was one of the first points, right? So everybody talks about the enhanced unemployment, the extra 300 being an issue. But all the states that cut them, they're not seeing a spike in people looking for jobs that you would have thought. You would have thought, hey, shit, this enhanced unemployment is running out. I'm not going to have this anymore. I better start looking for a job. That hasn't happened. You know what I mean? So that's what I found very curious. And I was like, what the hell is going on then? So, over the years of being home, people having to have time to evaluate the pros and cons of long work days and possibly antiquated work expectations, we're starting to see that the issue that's causing people to not go back to work is actually they're looking for more convenience than a paycheck. Before, this is what I was getting to with the baby boomers. Before, get a job because you need money to take care of your bills, live your life. That's what it was, right? You will go to work, do your job to get that paycheck. You will go home. That's when you lived your life, when you got home. But now people are trying to live their lives in congruence with their work. They want to go to work and enjoy where they work. They want to be happy with their work. They want benefits. They want all these extra things.
Flexibility. And
The
everything.
flexibility. They want all these things that most companies don't provide because they never needed to provide. All they needed to provide is like, hey, you do this job, you get paid this much. That is it, right? Now people are like, that's not enough. After being home for, since March and being paid to be home pretty much, a lot of people were getting more. Some people were getting more than what they were even making at their job, just staying home. They started reevaluating. That's like, well, why the hell am I going back to this job that I hate doing for this kind of salary? And they started realizing, how can I lower my bills? How can I save some money? How can I, maybe not spend how I used to spend, lower my expenses? Now I can wait it out a little bit longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until I find that unique
and
job.
that's the thing that has been very curious about. Like, it's interesting to see that data. It's because it's the exact opposite. It's also like maybe that was giving those people like a lifeline to try to find jobs in between things.
Yeah.
Because like 300 extra a week. Okay, so you're talking $1,200. Like on top of your normal benefits, it might be an extra $1,000, $2,200 a month. It's like, you're not living a glamorous life on $24,000 a year.
No, man. There were people that were making at a minimum like $3,000 to $4,000 a month on because of these benefits.
Well,
and
I'm saying
also remember that prior to these 300, you were getting 600.
Yes, I understand the 600 aspect, but you also had a huge gap where you weren't getting anything.
Yeah,
The second half of like towards the tail end of last year, and then before these things really kicked in. So I do know, yes, there were getting significantly more, but your unemployment insurance is based off the percentage of what you were making when you were laid off.
Yes.
So it's not like you get laid off and you get a maximum $500, and then plus that on top of it. So you have to be making like 50, 60 grand a year in order to qualify for the extra $500 a week aspect, plus the extra portion. So if you're making 60 grand a year, and also use that. So they're making 60 grand a year and they were making $2,000 a week plus this. So $3,200. So 3,200 times 12, they're making roughly 38,000 a year.
Yeah.
So you went from making 60 to 38 and you still have to pay taxes on that 38. So it's a huge still drop in income aspect of it, but it's like, so these people waiting out. And I do agree with that because a lot of these job openings are your entry-level restaurant jobs. They are the hardworking jobs. They are the jobs that you do have to go to and you can't leave, to where they say childcare is another issue. If you have a kid, what do you do with them? It's like, well, I can't make my 60 grand a year anymore. I have a kid and the only thing available is these little minimum wage jobs. Like, what am I supposed to do with my kid?
Yeah.
So I think they start falling back on other social programs to where it's like, oh, like food stamps. They start falling back on these other things to where they did talk about, I have seen articles where the poverty rate and applications to a lot of other assistance programs has increased dramatically.
Yeah.
So where are they going to where it's like, hey, it's either between being home and raising my child or going to work. So then I think some people are choosing to stay home. Like, I don't know.
And then to that point, right? Childcare. This was an issue even before this happened, right? That we were seeing it more and more come up where women were, they were very upset that the fact that it's like, maternity leave wasn't long enough. Then we were seeing debates about paternity leave being available, and women were scared to get pregnant because they would lose their jobs, and all of these things. They were already an issue. This just magnified those issues because then schools shut down, which is schools for a lot of people is pretty much the free childcare that a lot of people need. So you have the article continued. They talked about childcare and everything. And it says, as the U.S. federal government fights over the definition of infrastructure, many Democrats are pushing for funding that encompasses human infrastructure like childcare and paid leave in new legislation. So Dufflo said that U.S. is behind on childcare. In other developed regions such as Europe, childcare is viewed as a societal effort, whereas the U.S. pushes responsibility of childcare solely onto mothers. On top of the responsibility, Dufflo said that there's a push in the U.S. for people to work unnecessarily long hours, and women are then pushed further behind male colleagues if they cannot keep up because they need to raise children. COVID has resulted in a reevaluation of the balance between work and family, but it has not solved the big issues for professional women. This is a major hindrance standing in the way of women succeeding in careers. So this is another big issue, right? I mean, and we've seen it personally, you know, myself with my wife and and our boys and everything. It's like, yeah, when you look at the options for childcare, if you want to send your kid to a decent childcare, right? You know, I'm not talking about like your very budget friendly childcare, but somewhere half decent. They're kind of pricey, you know, for one kid for 4 hours a day, you're looking at $800 a month, you know, and 4 hours a day, that's not enough. Like
Yeah.
you need to work a full-time job. So 4 hours a day is half. You still need another 4 hours of something
They're
else.
looking at $1,600, so
Yeah,
$1,500 to
so-
$2,000.
And then you go take a job that maybe you're not making 25, $3 grand.
Well, I mean,
you know?
well, look at that. So that's after-tax income.
Yeah.
That you got to make. So you got to say, let's just call it $2,000 on the high end. That's $24,000. Well, you take taxes out of that aspect, you got to make $35 grand a year. Like minimum wage jobs, even $15 an hour jobs. Like don't even like. I'm curious what is 15 hours get you? So yeah, 15 times 40 times 52. That's only $31,200.
Yeah.
And then you minus your 20% of that for taxes, you're at $24,960. Essentially, you're trading like my kid's going to go to childcare and I'm going to go to work.
Yep.
All my money from that I'm getting paid at my job goes straight to the childcare. Or kid stays at home, mom stays at home. It's a wash.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, so it's rather do you want to spend time with your kid or I work? And
Well,
it's like,
and then-
well, I'm going to stay going to work then.
And then you look at it and like to your point earlier, well, then I might as well just do one of these government programs, right? I'll get on food stamps. I'll do this or I'll do that. That gives me some assistance because sending my kid to childcare and getting a job is a wash. Then any little extra help I can get, it's all profit essentially, right? It's
Yeah. So I mean,
it's
like
not that they want that, but it's like they don't have the options, right? So I had an article in here. I was trying to find it, but it was a few weeks ago, and I just weren't getting to it. But you have like these big banks in New York City and everything. They're saying that there's no more question. You must come back to work.
Chase said that.
Yeah, you got to come
Investment
back
banks.
to. But J.P. Morgan too. There's a few
Chase
of them.
is JP Morgan.
That's who I meant.
Goldman Sachs.
Wells Fargo. Wells
There you
Fargo
go.
was the other one. But they're like, you have to come back to the office, right? So for especially for women that are home taking care of the kids, working from home was a huge help because it's like they were there working, taking care of the kids, plus they can still generate the income and everything. So they saved on childcare, and now they're making some
and also
money.
now you add like they're starting to like municipalities and cities across the nation are starting to implement more restriction because of the new Delta variant aspect of it.
Yeah.
To where it's like you do have a lot of things to where it's like just running that math right there. Like $15 an hour is just over 30 grand a year. And that's if you work 40 hours a week for every week of the year, which we know isn't true. That some people get. So it's like very hard.
That's pre-tax.
Yeah, pre-tax.
All right.
It's like if you work 40 hours a week every week, but I mean that doesn't include Christmas, holidays, anything like that.
Yeah.
To where the $15 an hour is 30 grand a year. And then you'd have to have dual incomes to make 60 grand a year to take care of the kids, and that's just one kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I'm sure you had two kids, like you're closer to 3 grand.
Yep.
So 3,500 for child care. And it's like, and then you got food, you got housing, you got a lot of things on top of that. That's just like, yeah, I can see why it's very hard for somebody because like they just like I'm just not going to go do that job then.
Well, and then people say, you know, oh, well, it's their fault. They decided to have a kid. Okay, yes, but you got to understand how society works. Like, if people just stop having kids, there's a
Your
problem.
economy dies. Like,
You know, you need the next generation to come in, work, to take care of your ass when you get older so you have benefits and you have other things. You understand? Like, if people are not having kids, it starts hurting future generations. It starts hurting current generations. It hurts the economy. You have less people spending. You have less buying power. And that was something that we read in that book, Upside. We read in that book how they talked about like one of the biggest problems the baby boomer generation has was that Gen X, I believe it was, they were too small of a generation. They're like, so they're not going to be able to sustain the Social Security payouts that the baby boomers are going to need when they hit that
and
age.
here's another thing that I think is attributed to this too is like the baby boom generation, the Gen Xers, they're enabling. So it's like, so we're talking about people that have kids and are going to work. So we're talking about people that are in their 30s and up.
Yeah.
For let's call it just that generation aspect, to where What about all the 18 to 30-year-olds, people that don't have kids, the 22-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, and stuff like that? Like, where are they to fill these jobs? And I really think it's I was talking about this, a very big scale of mismatch where you have 40s and 50-year-olds that need jobs. Well, the jobs that are hiring, like they take technical knowledge of computers and how to manipulate these things and work in a whole different environment. We've had discussions about this in the past where it's like, they just don't get it. They don't understand it. They don't see how that stuff works. So it's like, well, you don't fit this job. Well, so you go work for these lower skilled ones that don't pay the economy doesn't pay as much for.
Yeah.
Well, you can't sustain your lifestyle on those lower payments. You need the pay of this technical job that you don't have the skills for, that you got to go get retrained for.
We're actually going to be touching on that topic. Okay. So I want you to hold that enthusiasm a little bit.
Did you talk on the one about baby boomers allowing their kids to stay at home?
Yes.
That is part of it too?
Baby boomers, no.
That's
my next one is continuing this topic.
Okay, well, another one, like I said, I think the baby boom enables kids to stay home. Yeah. Allowing their 20-year-old son or 22-year-old daughter to be like, oh, they just haven't found their way yet, so I'm going to let them just live at home. I'm going to pay for all their bills. I'm going to pay for all their groceries. I'm going to pay, not kicking them out and be like, go be a productive person in society. I get this whole find your passion thing. Go find your passion on your own dime.
Yeah.
Like, struggle a little bit. Realize that you do need to go work these jobs, because I think there's several people that are younger generations that like they want to be social media influencers. So they spend all their time doing stuff like that. Or I was like, oh, I see you working at a McDonald's or working construction as a job that you don't make much money. I'm above that. And the parents are saying like, well, my child's above that. They're better than that. They don't need to go work that kind of job. They need to go focus on school. They need to go do this. And even though little Johnny's going to spend that money on beer and partying and stuff like that. Like, I saw that multiple times going through college where there was a kid whose mom paid for his groceries, so he didn't have to work for school. What was he doing? He was going to Walmart and have his 20-year-old buddies going to buy beer at Walmart, and he was saying it was groceries. And so
you had a really good plan when you were young. But
but I think that is another thing it's attributing to some of these people, like, no, but the younger workforce that has these technical skills, doesn't have them yet, or two, doesn't want to go in and work because they haven't been brought up being able to support their own way.
So again, we're going to be getting into that topic. So
let's go there.
This next article was full-time minimum wage workers can't afford rent anywhere in the U.S. So people working with minimum wage jobs full-time cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment in any state in the country. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition out of Reach report finds. So, okay, the name of the report is called Out of Reach. In 93% of the U.S. counties, the same workers can't afford a modest 1-bedroom. The report defines affordability as the hourly wage a full-time worker must earn to spend no more than 30% of their income on rent, in line with what most budgeting experts recommend, which is something that we look at. You need to make 3 times rent, right? So this year, workers would need to earn $24.90 per hour for a 2-bedroom home and $20.40 per hour for a 1-bedroom rental. That's an increase of $23.96 and $19.56 respectively from last year. The average hourly worker currently earns $18.78 per hour, and reports find more than $6 short of the wage needed to afford a 2-bedroom rental. Given each state and locality's minimum wage, the report finds that the average minimum wage worker in the U.S. would need to work nearly 97 hours per week to afford the average 2-bedroom home. That's more than 2 full-time jobs. This group is urging the government to ensure that COVID-era emergency rental assistance programs help those with the greatest need. It's also calling for policymakers to create permanent universal rental assistance for eligible households, to invest in new affordable housing, and to implement stronger rental protection laws. So, here's what I was finding, because I decided to do a little bit more research, because they talk about the biggest issue is minimum wage, right? So I did a research about how much of the workforce, what's the age of the workforce that's doing minimum wage. So you have from 16 to 24 years old, they make up 47% of the workforce getting paid minimum wage or lower. 16 to 24-year-olds. Then you have 25 to 34-year-olds that makes up 22% that are getting paid minimum wage. So you have right there, you have what, 69%, 70% of the people that are getting paid minimum wage are under 34 years old. Right? So you're looking at that, and I'm just looking at when they talk about this crisis and everything, I'm like, most of these are still kids.
Yeah.
That a lot of them, yeah, you should be getting paid minimum wage. You know, you're just starting off in the workforce. Because what I was curious about is like, are we having people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, like a large percentage of them working for minimum wage? Because that's really where the problem begins, right? We talked about last episode, we talked about that conversation that I had with Dan Francis on millennial peak spending.
Yeah.
And we are just starting to hit millennial peak spending because they're just starting to hit the oldest millennials are starting to hit 40 years old. So if that's when you're starting to hit peak spending, and most of your people that are making a minimum wage are 34 and younger, like, are they really moving the economy all that much?
Yeah.
Like, are they really the issue? So I don't know. I'm asking, like, what do you think? Like, do you think that these younger people, when you're talking about 70% of the people that are making minimum wage or lower are under 34 years old, how is minimum wage the issue?
Well, it's one thing that we've always talked about. Like, I don't think minimum wage is the sole, just like removing the $300 is the only issue. I mean, I really think it's a plethora of things where, like, because the economy will take care of itself, and we're already seeing it where higher wages are trickling down, and it is bringing some people back to work. To where, like, I think it's a multiple prong issue of everything we've talked about, where it's skills mismatch, not being paid enough, just pure lazy kids due to lazy parenting, and people just not pushing their kids out the door and be like, oh, I don't want them to feel the pain that I have, so I'm going to support them. Or like, eventually that stuff will run out. I was talking to a friend of mine that he went on a trip to Wyoming somewhere and just went camping, and he said he ran into a group of like 22 to 25-year-old college, like a group of girls that were just completely lost in their way, and just like, well, they just kind of travel from place to place. They go live with their parents, and they go on long trips and just going camping, very minimalist kind of people, but they had no jobs, they had no aspirations, they didn't want to do anything, or they were just lost. They didn't know what to do. They're like, there's, I think, a good subset that are like that, and that's attributed to the way they were brought up and how they were supported growing up, and or how they were raised. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things that what is the issue? I don't know. And like when we come to this unemployment thing, to where I mean, a lot of things in the economy too, we're talking about all this inflation where you're having rising unemployment or very stubborn unemployment that's not falling. And if you start getting inflation rising with that, you have what they thought in the 80s was impossible, or the 70s was stagflation, which is where you have rising unemployment and rising inflation at the same time, where the cure for one exacerbates and kills the other, to where it's like, hey, we lower interest rates, inflation takes off, but unemployment drops. We raise interest rates, inflation goes down, but unemployment takes off. So what do you do in that scenario? Well, back in, I wasn't obviously alive, but I hearing what they did. I mean, they just jacked interest rates like drastically up, where they chose that right. It's going to hurt in the short term, but it's going to be overall long term and good for the economy, to where you could get that scenario with that, to where the Federal Reserve and the financial industry is like, we can't have this inflation going to where we're going to have massive inflation and massive employment, and we're going to be screwed. To where they got to do something. To where, what is the answer to fix it? I have no idea.
So I think looking at what is the answer, I think this is just, it's going to be a big adjustment period for a lot of people. This is going to be an adjustment period for companies, where one of the points that was made too is that, you know, these much longer than needed work hours. I had also seen a headline, I couldn't find the article again, but there's people pushing for 4-day work weeks instead of 5 days. 4 days. So it's thinking about, okay, as a business owner, you need people. How can you either become more efficient with less time per person, right? And still pay them a full wage. So now this person can come in and instead of working 40 hours a week, maybe they're doing 30 hours a week, but they still make 40-hour a week pay,
Yeah.
right? And then what other benefits can you give them? You know, do you give them time in the day during their workday that they can go ahead for, you know, what do you call it? Like mental health time or something that they can go meditate somewhere, spa day. I don't know what the heck, because it seems like what people are looking more for is that quality of life.
Yeah.
It's that, what does that quality of life look like?
Your Google model.
Yeah, exactly. That you have those little nap pods and you have, you know, a nice little kitchen setup and some games and these things and that things, where now it's like, yeah, I want to go work here because it's fun. Because it doesn't seem like people, we've seen it in construction in a lot of areas, right? Where it's like, it doesn't seem that the money is the issue. It's the quality of life that they're getting to make that money. That's the issue. It's the quality of the job. Maybe they're going in too early. They don't want to go in too early. Maybe
that's one of our guys' issues was like, I'm paying these guys $200 a day and I can't find workers. And I'm calling some of my old guys. He goes, yeah, you're offering me more money, but you start at 7 a.m. These guys start at 9.
Yeah.
It's like they don't want to work hard. And I think that's one thing this pandemic has kind of done is that people are just like, you know what? There's more to life than just going and making a bunch of money and spending all my time making money to go to work to make more money to just keep going back into work. It's like, or I just don't make as much money and I get to spend a little more quality time and finding pleasures in simpler things, I guess is a way to put it. Like,
yeah.
Not like, I don't need this fancy, well, shit, nowadays anybody can get a fancy new truck for
and then
rate. But
I think too, what's another driving factor? You have social media, I think, is a huge driving factor to people's stress and anxiety. That you, to your point before, everybody that's an influencer, right? Or everybody that's crushing it with crypto and whatever the hell. That's like, you go on social media, which everybody is on social media. It doesn't matter which platform you choose. People are on there like addictively. So you're looking at this and you're looking at maybe these kids or these people that you look at them and you're like, man, this person has, you know, a quarter of a brain. You know what I mean? And yet they're probably banking so much money because of this. I see them driving a new Mercedes. I see them going on vacation here. So you look at all that, and I think that kind of pressure and that kind of thing that you look at and you say, wait, and you're 16, 18 years old, and I'm going to go work for Burger King? No.
Yeah. No, that's been my harp. I know you've known this because I'm very critical on social media. That I think it exposes a lot of problems and creates massive, massive anxiety amongst other people because they see these people, quote unquote, living the life. But when you know, like, if you pay attention to what these things are and study it, it's like they're not, like, the amount of work that they have to do behind the scenes, how fake they can make things seem. Like, they put a bunch of money on top of their mattress. They're like, look, I'm killing it in these things. Like, no, they went and pulled all their money out of the bank, threw it on the bed, said, look at all these stacks of green I'm making. And like,
we talked to one of our friends recently that, you know, he's also a big investor here and everything. He told us how this other influencer on Facebook and Instagram that's an investor here, how he borrowed, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars so he can front like he's killing it. Yeah. So he can get a fancy office space, hire people and everything. You're borrowing money to look like you're making money.
Yeah, it's like these are massively in debt to realize it's unsustainable business model. That's like
insane.
And that's why I can't get on social media so much because like I have a problem, even though I know that's what's happening, and that these people I've talked to them is like they are not as happy as they seem on social media. You only see the 5% of the time when things are going good, and like I know that, and I still see it. And they're like, "Oh, I killed it with this thing," and it still messes with me inside, even though I know. It's like I I just can't get on it. Anytime I see one of those posts, like, why are they killing it and I'm not?
And that's why like where I disagree with you on social media. It's not that social media is the problem. Is that I don't think that social media itself is the problem. It's how we use social media that's the problem. I think the problem falls on us because I'm not a fan of blaming other things. I'm a fan of taking responsibility. Mm-hmm. That's my thing, right? Like I believe that we should all take responsibility. So if you're going on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, and you're letting these people, these videos influence the way you live your life, you have a different problem.
Yeah.
You have a problem of self-esteem. You have a problem of whatever it may be that you need to either go get therapy, go find Jesus. I don't know, but
I'm not disagreeing with that. I just think it's like everyone is responsible, and I do believe that you're responsible for your own actions in your own life.
Yeah.
The problem has become but it's so rampant across social media to where it's like, okay, and this is how governments get involved, where it's like when it's a problem the public sector can't figure out and solve for themselves, that's how government gets involved and says like, okay, obviously when it's 95% of the people are having big issues like that and having problems, it's causing societal problems. It's like it is their problems, but it's become such a big problem. It's society's problem. And now it's becoming the social media problems where it's like you now see Facebook like starting to regulate these things, and they starting to see like implementing structures and barriers to like people being on certain times and certain content and being able to look at these, putting these things in place because they realize the detriment it's having on society as a whole.
Yeah.
So where it's like, I do agree, but it's like, you're not going to retrain 330 million people to take self-accountability. You're talking a very, very small subset that knows how to do that.
Let's take the responsibility away from people and let's control their life. Because that's what that always sounds like to me. You're saying people are too dumb, too lazy, whatever it may be, to take control of their life. So now we, the government, need to step in and take control of your life for you.
Well, look how the interstate system was built. The states themselves were too dumb and too inability to create interstate. But that's what I'm saying. It's like there's a big societal problem that the private sector can't solve themselves, so government gets involved and starts working to create it.
Who says that the private sector can't solve it? Like, I look at the other side. I believe we are solving it. It's just, yes, during that period of time, we're going to see a lot of bad shit.
But how are they solving it?
Because we're seeing those things change. We're seeing that people want more quality of life.
No, I'm talking social media. And that's what I'm still on is like, how is social media solving
No.
problems?
I'm not saying social media. I'm saying society, because you're saying society can't solve it, so the government needs to step in.
I was talking about solving the social media aspect of people getting those like addicted and depressing things, being stuck on social media and having those things. So that's what I'm talking about.
But that's what I'm saying. What that's creating is an expectation of what your quality of life should be based on the crap that you're seeing on social media. That majority of it is fake, right? So social media is promoting all of that because people are promoting all of that. So you're saying that's the issue.
It's people's ability to want that. They want that. As they see, they're like, oh, I see this person making $10,000 on YouTube every week, and like, I want that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I want that income, and the ease that they show that their life is. They go out and just have fun and pay thousands of dollars to do it.
Yeah,
and it's like that's what they want.
Yeah, but why are you saying that the government needs to come in and control that? How do you expect the government to control that? By doing what?
I mean, you already see them trying to do that. Like breaking up these companies to where, I mean, that's debatable whether it's going to have a good thing or not, because the profit model of these companies is to have eyeballs. So you need people on there showing like the Mr. Beast guy. As like he's out there just spending a freaking $500,000 on a fireworks show and then bragging about it, to where you have people that like, well, I want to be able to do that aspect of it. And I think that in itself is the issue. Is you have people, I don't know how they control it or what they do, because the profit model is around eyeballs, and you need people showing off these things to get people addicted to it.
What I'm saying is like, even that addiction, the overall society is starting to adapt to it. It's starting to make changes according to it.
How can you say they're adapting to it when you have adolescent suicide rates exponentially increasing, and they contribute it straight back to social media and the depression they get from not getting likes on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, followers?
That's the problem with anything, right? Like, you can't talk about such a massive topic that encompasses so many areas and then pull out one data point that's going to prove your point. Right?
Well, it's not just one person.
Suicide rates. Okay, yes.
Depression rates, alcoholism, anything. It's like a lot of it where like people are more depressed by using social media than not using social media.
Well, people use more alcohol because they were forced to stay home. So should we ban the government for shutting down the economy?
Well, yeah, everyone agreed with that.
But what I'm saying is like there's a lot of unintended situations with a lot of things. And again, going back to the suicide rate, while yes, it is 100% terrible. I completely agree. I think it's horrible because this is something that I've spoken to my wife about a lot of times, is that back when we were kids, right, you would get bullied and you go home, that was it. like the bully stayed at school, right? Like that was it. Now you go home, the bully follows you because they're on your phone at all times.
Yeah.
You're everywhere you go. You're seeing all this crap about you, right? So now this is where I believe we need to take some responsibility. If the government's going to intervene in any way, they need to intervene more in a psychological way of saying like, you need to have self-esteem. You need to understand, like, I believe giving kids a cell phone, under the age of, I don't know, what, 15, 16, is extremely dangerous.
Or it's a smartphone. You get a flip phone. It was like
exactly. Yeah. You can get a flip phone. You can text. You can call. Right. But getting a smartphone with the powers that these phones have, and then the inexperience, the underdeveloped brain, the underdeveloped everything that you have at such a young age, and how easily you are to, influence you, to manipulate you, to piss you off, to get you sad, how easy it is at those age, you're giving them the weapon. Yeah. You, the parent, are giving them the weapon. I think
it's like, to your point, your wife put on here, is I think it's I think it's still something that is very new to society, which I agree it's less than 15 years old, or it's right about 15 years old, and has to figure out how to use it, how we teach our children to use it, etc. So education does need to come out towards the adults that grew up when social media came out, like your younger millennials, because it was invented by older millennials, are now starting to come of age and have kids. And I think a lot of it we talk about, the problems can be solved when it comes around to education, to educating people of the dangers of how this stuff affects childhood psychology and things like that, to where it's like, that is where the government needs to step in to treat it at its cause of like, social media is inherently, or is bad, used in the wrong way, in the wrong hands.
Let's look at it this way then. Let me put this point across then. It's bad for your health, right? Let's look at cigarettes, drinking, all these things. Why don't we put an age requirement on when you can create a Facebook account, when you can create an Instagram account, when you can create a TikTok account, where it's like, you cannot be on these social platforms until you're 16 years old, 18 years old. You are not allowed on these platforms as a child.
Well, I think they need to because you do, like, you can't at 9 years old you can't create a Facebook account with your birthday, or at 10 years old you can't. Like, I think there are age requirements, but you can lie. It's pretty easy to lie.
Well, I think
you need to have there needs to be more security. I think that's a good idea. Yeah. There needs to be more security around people being able to sign up for these accounts.
Yeah, because if you make it that way, then now it's no longer on the parent to not give their kid a phone and then be that, that asshole parent that has the only kid in the school that doesn't have a phone and the kid feels like a loser or whatever. Like, your kid could have a phone. It's just every kid in that school does not have access to social media.
That might be a solution to where it's like, because it's the
There you go, Biden. Got your problem solved.
That is you said like the underdeveloped brain and not being able to know how to handle these things. So it's like, we all know alcohol and cigarettes are physically bad for your body, especially the younger you are. They're like under 21. So like, why isn't social media the same thing but for your mental health?
Yeah,
I think that is a something that more security around that, and I think that is something they're trying to do. It's like protecting children from these things. We're like, yes, it is a two-pronged thing where the parents need to do something about it in teaching their kids how to handle these things, but it could be from the government's aspect, making a social media company be like, look, you can't allow these kids on these things. You need to protect these children from the predators out there trying to prey on the young underdeveloped.
Well, not even. I honestly, I don't even believe it's the predator to the level of predators. Just that, I think like a lot of the predators are kids themselves. Kids nowadays, because of social media, some of them they're like really freaking mean. You know what I mean? Like, I look at some of the stuff that some of these kids do to bully each other. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a kid that if I saw him, if I was picking up my son from school, I might hit him with my car. You know what I mean? Just like, you're not going to be missed. Just kidding. It's a joke, okay?
John doesn't drive to school.
Yeah, no, I don't drive my kids, okay? So it was a joke. But but it is one of those things that, like, kids are very mean. But if you limit the ability, and are there kids that are going to find a way around it? If you put the right parameters in place, it's going to become very freaking hard to do so, right? Where you need to prove some form of ID that proves your age.
Oh, for sure. It's like you can land. I was like, I just look at technology. It was like they were able to take human beings, launch them 350 miles into, or however many miles the moon is away, and bring them back to Earth with nothing more than the freaking power of a calculator. It's like, we can figure out technology like in a way. Yes, it's always going to be, there's going to be people trying to get in front of, just like malware, spyware. Somebody's always on the cutting edge trying to prove. But for 95% of the masses, I think they could create a way to protect and garner that aspect of it.
I had I was reading right now Tommy's comment that he says people becoming less tolerant of delayed gratification, less able to process the abstract, less use of the long-term shortage and retrieval hemisphere of the brain, less working body of knowledge. So I recently, this week, I interviewed Sharad Mehta. He's the CEO and founder of RE Simply. That's a CRM that we use. And one of the things that I loved about the interview that I wasn't expecting it to go that way, but we talked a lot about mental health and stuff like this. And the biggest topic with all this was how he doesn't have email on his phone. He doesn't have social media on his phone, right? Any of those things, he needs to open up a computer to access. Because he's like, email, there's never anything urgent. I have my times that I communicate with my team. They know those times. So the team needs to have those things ready for when I communicate with them. I don't need to be on call 24/7. And then the same with social media. He's like, social media, I jump on purely to run my business, right? He's like, I don't jump on for the social aspect of it. So what that's allowed him to do is have so much mental clarity, so much more flexibility with his own brain and mind that he's able to run multiple business, build his investing portfolio to like 50 something properties, and they're all free and clear. I mean, he has an insane rental portfolio. He has an insane business that runs like pretty much automated because he has all the mental ability to do so because he doesn't get caught up with all these things, right? A book that we read, Deep Work, excellent book. Excellent points in there that I'm going back and reviewing because I need it. But they talk about all of those things is the ability to disconnect, the ability to, we keep training our brain to want gratification faster and faster, instantly at every single second. And whenever we're doing something, even if you're in the toilet taking a dump, you need to be on TikTok.
Well,
right?
I mean, I just noticed that like as well. Like you're just sitting there
taking a dump on TikTok.
No. If you're just sitting there waiting in line, the urge to grab your phone and open it up and look at something. Like it is, and I noticed it, I'm like, fuck, or stop at a red light, phone. Like it constantly to where like you just saying it, was like, there these last several like weeks, months, you notice it like if there's like a fraction of a downtime, let me just check something real quick, and then 15, 20, 30 minutes go by, and you're like, I just needed like 2 seconds, and now I just lost 30 minutes of my life to these things, and it is very hard, and it's very, very hard to do that. But doing a barrier of entry does make it harder for you. Like if that half second's not there.
Well, I look at it like how hard it is for us, even though we essentially like I didn't have my first smartphone. Like in my 20s, until my 20s, I didn't have my first smartphone, right? Which I remember my first smartphone was actually a BlackBerry. And this was when I was living in Spain. So that was my first smartphone. These kids are having smartphones at the age of 10. iPads, all these things. They know how to maneuver it much better than their parents. Yeah. Much, much better than their parents. And their parents think they're slick because they're like, oh, I put this code. My son knows how to work the remote for Amazon Fire Stick. He blocked the account. He created a pin that only he can watch the damn fire. I was like, you're 5 years old. What the? No more TV for you. He
actually locked you guys out or you couldn't use?
He locked HBO Max out, even though he has a kid's profile. I don't know how the hell he did it.
But did he actually know the pin to unlock it?
No, he didn't remember the pin. It was a process. So he put whatever. I think he did it accidentally. But that being said, like
he was exploring settings.
You know what I mean?
Like you weren't just watching TV and like you were screwing with the settings and stuff.
My 1.5-year-old, you put a phone in front of him, and he instantly knows he needs to swipe to make the phone do things. He knows he needs to swipe, not click, swipe. He's 1.5 years. You understand? So you look at this, and it's like they can handle the technology. The problem is mentally. They can't handle. And look at us again. I started with smartphones in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I have addiction. I told you this morning. I was like, man, I'm addicted to TikTok. Like I could be on there for an hour and a half, not realize it.
Yeah.
Like it's something that I can be on.
Yeah, it's designed for like I said, it's a perfect app for an ADD to where it's like it's constant feed of entertainment for just one swipe,
Instant.
double tap, like with one finger, you can have an hour-long entertainment.
Yeah.
And it keeps you, and it's just boom, boom. It's not like watching a movie where you get to a boring scene and you start.
Well, even then,
off,
even then, right? You're watching TV. I see it even with my wife. Like we're like, hey, let's watch the show. Yeah, cool. While we turn on the show, we're waiting for the credits to roll through or everything like that. She's on her phone until it starts. And even then, she's on her phone probably until like the first minute or so, the intro of the show is over, and then gets to it. And it's just those habits that we formed.
Lorenzo puts on here, my 5-year-old tries to swipe any screen.
Yeah.
Why won't the TV go?
Oh, yeah. It's something they go to the TV too, and they're like, the TV's not working. I was like, yeah, eventually. But I don't know. And so when you talk about unemployment, when we talk about all these things, it kind of like recapping what we talked about earlier is the world is shifting. People are changing. The expectations people have of just, hey, I'm happy to have a job that I get paid and I can come home. That's no longer enough. People want more. People want more quality of life. So as an employer, as somebody that needs people, you need to think about it that way. You need to think about what can I do with my business, with my company that I can make it more attractive for people to want to work for me. More flexible hours. We've tried that before where we say, hey, I don't care what hours you do as long as the job gets done. The problem with that is that we saw that they also do need structure, because when you do that, then nothing gets done.
There's a hybrid model to it somewhere.
And it's that learning curve.
Yeah.
That's going to be a challenge.
It is for sure. For sure.
So with all that being said, we are pretty much at the top of our 2-hour show here. So if you don't have anything else, I think we will call it a day.
Okay.
So thank you all for watching. Make sure you are part of our Texan community.
Hit that like button.
Yeah. Join that Texan community because we share tips and everything in real time of everything that we're doing. To do so, just text info at 210-794-9898, and you will get a text back of all the different little groups that you can join within the community, so you get alerted. With that being said, we're here every single Friday, 8 a.m. Texas time, talking about the trends, the news, everything that affects you and your business. This is the best business podcast you're ever going to listen to because we don't talk bullshit. We talk what really affects.
Awesome.
We awesome. So with that being said, guys, thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye-bye.